This is all stuff I can't post. Anytime I've ever tried to post this stuff up, Instagram always flags it because of how fucking brutal it is.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the weekly recording of the Mayn Idea podcast, where today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Rob, the creator of McDojoLife. A quick reminder for those that enjoy this podcast, please take 30 seconds and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and subscribe to the YouTube channel. This helps the show get discovered organically and helps me continually bring on amazing guests. Also, there are now timestamps in the show notes, so feel free to jump around, although I recommend listening to the episodes in their entirety. Rob is the creator of McDojoLife, one of the most viral social media accounts covering martial arts. The main focus of McDojoLife is to keep martial arts legitimate by exposing the fakes, frauds, and phonies in the martial arts community while promoting the martial artists who are making a positive impact. Although McDojoLife shares many laugh-out-loud moments, I think that you'll be surprised, as I was, about how much Rob works behind the scenes to expose truly dangerous and irresponsible individuals within the martial arts space. Also, be on the lookout for the McDojoLife documentary that just landed a very critical investor. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Without further ado, Rob Anonymous, the creator of McDojoLife. Projector umbrella thing here, but dude, Rob, I'm so stoked you're here. You're doing God's work out in the world, keeping martial arts legit and exposing the fakes. So thank you for taking time out of that superhero duty to be here, man.
I don't know about all that, man. I'm just a guy who loves martial arts and really can't stand frauds. So you put those two things together and I pop out somehow.
When did you get involved in martial arts? What was like the initial draw for you to become a life enthusiast?
I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so because of that I have scars on my face. So I have this like big patch missing. Everyone online always says I have like the anti-Hitler or the reverse Hitler mustache because I can't grow hair there. So
right. Dude, my mustache is weak as shit too. Don't worry.
Man, I can't even connect the beard. They took that away from me at birth, and then this just doesn't. This sucks. But anyway, so I was picked on and teased when I was younger, and it kind of came to a head when I was like 12 years old. So I was in 8th grade at that time, and I got jumped by a group of kids who were picking on me and making fun of me. And they beat me for 5 minutes. So they beat me from the time the bell rang until the time the next bell rang for you to be in class, which was a 5-minute gap. And so it was like a group of 5 or 6 kids. I remember us getting into the argument in the locker room when time was about to expire for us to leave class. And they were like, when we get outside, we're gonna mess you up. I don't even know if I can cuss on here, so I kept.
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, well, they dropped the F-bomb on me anyway, so they let me know that they were going to beat me down, and so they circled me outside that classroom, and out of nowhere, I just get hit right in the back of the jaw, bam, and that kid just beats on me for a second, and somewhere in there I fell, and then they just jumped me, and then they kicked me in the face. Like I had glasses then too, so a piece of my glasses broke and like cut my face up. I was getting hit, and adrenaline's a beautiful thing in moments like that because you don't really feel anything.
For sure.
But I got stabbed in the hand, like anytime I ever meet anyone out there and you want to see it, but I have a piece of pencil, like lead marking, almost like a tattoo in my finger because a kid tried to stab me.
From then?
Yeah.
Dude, these kids
so I went to go block it, and the pencil stabbed me in the finger. What a douche. And then so like 2 teachers stood there and watched the entire thing and did nothing about it. They just watched me get beaten. And a friend of mine who was always late to everything he's ever done in his entire life, but we were best friends now. At the time, we were just acquaintances. He waddled over and he picked me up and he walked me to the nurse's office. And again, none of the teachers did anything about this. Like after that second bell rang for kids to be in class, all those kids just scattered. So he's walking me to the nurse's office and he hands me like one of those free trial business cards for a martial arts school. He goes, "You need this." Those were the only words he said to me. "You need this." We didn't say another word to each other. Like we were just acquaintances. We talked every once in a while. So that night when I went home, I asked my mom, I was like, "Can I do karate?" Which was what it was for. Yeah. And she didn't let me do anything. She didn't let me do football, basketball, anything because she was worried that during that time I was still going through a lot of surgeries, that if I got hit in the face, it would undo a lot of that, which it really would cause a lot of damage because of my issue. So that night she said maybe. And my mom is not a maybe person. She's a yes or no person. So it always stood out to me that she said that. So
Did
that
she
next
know
month,
that what had happened at school that day?
yeah, like I guess when you're, for lack of better words, I cannot stand the word bullying. I think it's the dumbest fucking word in existence. But I was bullied at school, and so because I was constantly being picked on and teased, like I tried to hide a lot of that from my mom. I always felt like that was a burden. I didn't want to like cause major issues. And the truth is like, the old adage that people used to tell you is if you stand up to the bully, then they'll leave you alone. Well, yeah, if you fucking win, like
Yeah.
if you get your ass beat, you just chum the water. Now
Right.
publicly everyone knows you suck at fighting, and now you got this beat down. Now you just chum the water to let all these other assholes know they were like, I can't fight, but I could beat him up.
It's
So
true.
it's like,
You see it in the movie. It's when someone stands up, they rock the bully with one punch, and then they stand there, and the bully cowers away. But you're right. If you get your ass whooped in a standing up to someone situation, you've just proved that you can't stand up to anybody.
yeah, it sucks, man. And like the word bullying in itself, just so I can go off on that tangent for a moment, why I think that word is so stupid is because it encompasses all of these things that have consequences to the action, but it doesn't actually have consequences in itself. So for instance, if I said this kid was bullying me at school, is there a law against bullying? No. It's like such an intangible thing because bullying it encompasses a lot of things that do have consequences. For instance, assault and battery. There's a law
Right.
against that. There are specific consequences. But when we're kids, they go, "Oh, that kid was picking on me." No, he wasn't. He assaulted you. Like
Right. Yeah. When
there's a
five kids
rule.
circle a kid outside of gym class, they stab him and punch him in the face and knock him. Like
Yeah, it's like
that's not an
that's why
emotional
bullying is such
banter.
a it's a fucking bullshit word. We need to stop using it as a society. We already have words in place for all of the things that encompass what bullying really is, like stalking. There are laws against stalking, harassment. Like all of these things have laws, but as soon as you take all of those things and you call it bullying, you now have basically given it protection. Like words are powerful, and so when we say, "Oh, they were bullying you," like no, motherfucker, they weren't. They were assaulting you. So
Yeah.
let's deal with it as assault. Let's deal with it as what it really is. So anyway, it's my high horse about someone who was bullied and hating
Fair.
the word.
Take the ride. Yeah. So anyway, you get this card. Your mom kind of semi approves you doing it for the first time, and it's like, sure, maybe you
Yeah,
can
and then
try that out.
well, the next month it was a surprise. So my birthday was the next month. It was April, and then I received like a gift. It was just one gift, and it was like a piece of paper, like it was like in a box. And so when she like pulled out the paper, it was a copy of my contract for the martial arts school. She goes, "I paid in full for a year." And
Hell
I was
yeah.
like, "Oh my god!" Like that was huge to me, and I know
Yep.
that that's not cheap. Um,
Yep.
and so I was like, "Man, that really meant a lot." So my birthday was the very first class I've ever taken. On that night, I went to the class. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it changed my life. It
Were
really
you a
did.
fan
Martial
at
arts.
that point in your life? If you think back to that, were you a fan of like? Are you idolizing Bruce Lee? Are you watching Bloodsport? Are you like kind of putting all these people in a space where you would call them cool and kind of look up to that type of thing? Or was karate something that was totally new to you? You're in there for the first time and it just kind of clicked.
I mean, it was all fairly new. Like my acquaintance friend, I had hung out with him a few times, and I knew that he did karate. And I'd seen it on TV. I guess I just wasn't like a super fan of it. I was more into video games. I was more into anything that would allow me to be as isolated from other human beings as possible. Because from my experience at the time, human beings sucked balls. So I was like, this
Yeah.
fucking blows. Like I don't want to be around people because every time I'm around people, they pick on me, they tease me, they beat me up. It's like I don't want to be around people, so I isolated myself, and I think that it gave me an outlet to understand that there are places on the planet that will just accept you, period, regardless.
Yeah.
Like no questions asked, doesn't matter. And like I guess it's one of the reasons I really do what I do. Like martial arts to me is such a beautiful thing. It's one of the last bastions of truth. You walk onto a mat and no one cares about your political affiliation usually. If it's a good school, no one
Yeah.
asks you like no one cares about your race, your sex, your skin color, your religion. No one cares about any of that shit. It's are you good at this activity and how can we all make each other better at this activity?
Yeah.
And that's it. Like when you start trying to interject all that other bullshit, that's when martial arts schools become toxic. That stuff has no place there. That it should be just a place where you can share truth with another human being. And the truth is, when you're fighting someone else, you can't hide who you are.
Totally.
It comes out. It just comes out of you. You are that person. Are you sneaky? You'll be sneaky when you fight somebody. Are you a douche? You'll be a douche on the mat, I promise. And you can learn a lot by that, you know? So
It's crazy as an introspective and an external experiment when you go into a school, and especially the longer you've been there, because you're so on the money. It is one of the last environments, especially in the athletics arena, where you just get the person. Like, all the baggage is checked at the door. And then any of the personality traits, that positive or negative, right? People that are empathetic and caring and coaching, they tend to be empathetic and caring and coaching on the mat too. They want to make people better. They want to treat people well. They want to show techniques. People that have a big attitude, a big ego, sometimes they don't even last, because what happens? You go in, you think you're a badass, you get your shit rocked by someone half your size, and then you walk out of there being either telling yourself that it was a fluke and that there's no way that was real, and going about your life, or you do what most of us have done and you go, whoa, I need to know more about this. That was humbling. That was crazy. And then when you go in there, it's this cool, truthful environment. I just drawn to martial arts the same reason my whole life. I think it's a fascinating petri dish of, like, it's hard to find a place like that now, with how inundated you are of just with bullshit, to actually get to a place where everyone can just exist together, and truly no one has any care about it.
for sure. And like, it used to be the bathroom, right? You go to the bathroom and that's like sanctuary. Like, you know, but now you pull out your phone and you're just inundated with bullshit online all the time, so you can't even take a shit in peace, you know? So like, I don't know. I truly believe that martial arts in itself, as much as I rip on a lot of issues in the industry, is a beautiful thing, and it should be preserved.
But you're kind of, I don't know. I can see why McDojoLife has spread, and like it's so cool watching it spread and then seeing where it's at now, and then everything that's on the horizon, which we'll get to later. But you are not knocking martial arts. You're enriching martial arts by identifying the bullshit and then sharing with some of the best people across multiple different disciplines and training methods the trueness of it, while also showing, like, hey, there's a dirtbag dojo owners here. Like, that stuff's got to be, we got to do away with that ASAP, because you can't be having people with molestation charges opening schools, and no one is talking about that except you.
Yeah, well, I won't say no one. I will say, like, when I started, the only source material I really had to go off of was Bullshido. That was like the only source material. But the problem with that I found, at least with the forums, is there was no real standard. It was just kind of a bitching ground. It was like, I want to go here and I just want to complain. And then in trying to establish, if you want to fix something, typically the first way of doing it is you have to define it. So, like, if you look at almost any 12-step program, right, what's the first thing that you have to do? You have to admit you have a problem. Right? So you like, I have, like, this is the issue. So you have to define the issue in order to fix it. So I started there, but looking at Bullshido, I noticed, like, the biggest issue in martial arts is us. Like, martial artists are the problem with martial arts. We focus on some of the most nonsensical bullshit to argue about, and we completely ignore things that matter. Right. So, for instance, people will complain how long it takes to get a belt. Oh, that's a McDojo over there. You get a black belt in like 2-3 years. It's bullshit. Okay, well, let's go down that rule. So if that is a rule of standard that you're a McDojo if you get a black belt in 2 or 3 years. Well, are you saying that BJ Penn's full of shit because he got his black belt in like 3? Oh, no, that doesn't count. Then it's not a fucking rule. It's now a guideline, maybe. It may be a type of red flag, but it's not a rule. That's not a written in stone rule, because there are exceptions to it. And so when I look at something like that, really what that boiled down to is ego. It's simply, that person does an art I don't do, and my art is better than yours. That's what that really means when people say that crap. But they'll complain for hours about that semantical, stupid argument. But they won't actually call out the guy who's been raping kids. Like, it's amazing. If I post a video up of somebody knocking someone out with their chi voodoo powers, it'll get like, it'll spread like wildfire over the internet. If I post a video about a pedophile, there'll be like maybe 1/10 of the people interacting with it. Nobody sharing it. Nobody making sure that we spread these fucking douchebags' faces all over the internet. And what happens is when we ignore the major problems just for the sake of our own entertainment and ego, we are enabling that behavior. We ourselves as an industry are just saying, you know what? It's more important to me as a human being to complain about how long it takes someone to get a belt than it is for me to make sure that that pedophile doesn't rape another child. That's exactly what that behavior is.
Why do you think that happened? Do you think that's because it's people just turn a blind eye to negativity, or they don't want to engage with it? Do you think they don't believe you? Do you think what do you think makes someone move past an issue that's so pressing and important and
Well, I
look to
think that
something
it's
else?
hard. It's simply hard. Like it's like I'll give you an example. So I used to watch this dude on YouTube, right? And he would go on like these amazing political rants. And that, I'm like not getting into politics or whatever, but I thought the dude was like middle even keel, very entertaining. And all he would do, he would come out, he'd be in like his bathrobe. He would sit down in a chair in the middle of a very plain living room, and he would drink his tea, and he would just go on a tangent. No editing, nothing. And he would get like a couple 100,000 views in a couple minutes just because of how well he spoke.
Yep.
That is probably the rarest thing I've ever seen on the internet. Usually what winds up getting popular is some random hot chick or some random hot dude, and they'll go live and they'll just wash dishes. And for some odd reason, there's like 100,000 creeps just staring at them. There's no value there. They're not going to like sleep with you. They're not going to pay you any attention. And you could watch plenty of naked hot people all over the internet for free, but yet they'll just toss these influencers money because they're hot. I think our priorities in general are kind of fucked up. Not just martial artists, but I think that what happens is if it's not making me happy, getting that endorphins going, those juices that I need, if I can't look at it and laugh, then I don't want to have anything to do with it. That's someone else's problem. Well, if it's someone else's problem and we keep ignoring it, what ends up happening is we enable it. And here's kind of the biggest example I can give you. Martial artists typically, when it comes down to calling out people who are truly fraudulent, and I mean by actual fraud, like financially ripping people off, or
like dojo
people,
scam stuff and seminar scams.
Not just people who suck. If you suck at martial arts, I don't care. We all
and
suck
you can
at
get
something.
better.
Yeah, and like I applaud you for trying. If you're overweight, okay, like use martial arts as a tool not to be. Like I'm never going to pick on those individuals. I don't think that that's fair. But most martial artists, especially people in charge, typically say that they're going to ignore the outside issues because it doesn't affect their people. They're going to focus on their art, they're going to focus on their people, and that's all they're going to do is just make their people better. All right, well, let's give you an example here. Let's say martial arts is a high-rise building. So every floor on that building is a different martial art. First floor, karate. Second floor, taekwondo. Third floor, jiu-jitsu, and so on. And every day I go to teach my class, I go to the front desk, and I go to check in with the people at the front desk. Hey, Susan, how you doing? Oh, going up to the third floor, Rob? Yes, I am. And I go over there and I go up to the floor. But every day I go to that lobby, I look over to the left, and I see a guy trying to set the building on fire. Well, if I ignore that problem, eventually he will set this building on fire. And what happens is everyone in that building, it's going to be their problem now. Right. So when we have representatives of the martial arts industry who are constantly in the news for rape, pedophilia, extortion, injuring students, killing students, and even other things, running cults, and we ignore that, that's our fault. We allowed the behavior. We accepted it as a whole, and we shouldn't.
How do you find the fire starters? Like, you obviously, you've been doing this for a long time, so you have an ability to present the humor and the satirical stuff and the exposure, but also find these more serious events like what you're alluding to. How do you come across these? Because in a way, it's almost like, okay, if you're finding a conviction, then on the local level, the law enforcement or detectives or whatever, they're doing their job to get the person to the conviction. But how are you then finding these all over the country?
Well, it's not all over the country. It's all over the world, right? martial arts for a lot of people, it seems to be this massive thing, and it's really not. It's kind of a niche market. Not a lot of people want to get punched in the face as a hobby. Like as much as we would think people, hey man, I love it, but most people don't. And so because of that, it's a very tight-knit community. But just like anything else in any other martial art, there are lineages. And so, for instance, most people who get their black belt in Jiu Jitsu say, I am a black belt under so-and-so.
Right.
So they're proud of their lineage. Well, every martial art is the same way. They are under so-and-so. And what that tells me is, once you find the first, like, one cancer, well, that particular cancer was created by someone else. And then maybe that person was created by somebody else until you get to the top. Well, once you get to the top, usually the first person in charge, maybe let's say they made, just for lack of numbers, maybe they made 12 black belts. And then those 12 black belts each individually made 12 other black belts. And then those black belts each made 12 other black belts. Well, it becomes exponential. Like those numbers just keep doubling down and they keep getting massive. So when we look at somebody like, as an example, a George Dillman, like if George Dillman is patient zero for like some of the no-touch knockout stuff in his industry, how many black belts are under him that believe that? A lot.
A lot, yeah. Yeah.
And then how many black belts did they make? So it's actually not as hard as you would think to find issues in the industry. It's all a matter of tracing lineage. You do that, you'll find the source of the issue.
So you basically you find someone who gets exposed for some BS, and then you trace around and back up, and that kind of gives you the family tree, so to speak, of like where these things might be popping up. It's there's part of what you do that totally disappoints me, because I want to believe like I really want to believe that like Dim Mak and like all these pressure point knockouts and all this stuff was real. And dude, for years, like when I was a kid, I mean, I loved kung fu movies. I loved karate. I didn't get into jiu-jitsu until my 20s, just because of it wasn't available to me in the town I grew up in. And when I got into it, and obviously a humbling experience, right, when you actually start to really truly practice something and you realize how challenging things are, how vast of a valley there can be in skill differences, how strength doesn't equal everything and technique can overcome strength. All these things start to come to light as you actually practice this. And the more, so again, prior to finding your account, the more that I would do training, the more I'd be like, that some of that shit just can't be real. I'm like, there's no way that these people, A, train that way, B, that these seminars can be possible, that people are even going. And then when I found your account, I was like, oh, it is like this. These people are serious, and they're chock full of absolute bullshit. How did you start? Like, how did you initially start identifying these and then sharing them?
Well, we kind of talked about it originally, about in order to solve an issue, you kind of have to define what the issue is.
Yeah.
So I had to start off with, like, what are the real rules? Like, if I was going to make actual standards in the industry, what are
for
some
the
things
account.
that... Yeah, well, not just for the account. I think in the industry there should be certain things that we can all agree with, that shouldn't be tolerated. I had, like, a moment, really, that kind of solidified this thought. I had already developed the rules and stuff like that, but it was really kind of an awakening and understanding what the standards should be. It's like I went to something called SHOT Show. And I don't know if you've ever heard of SHOT Show or not, or anybody out there who hasn't heard of SHOT Show, but it's like the gun industry's biggest expo. It's massive. They tell you before you even go that it's impossible to go to every booth. And it is. It's impossible. In a week span, you will not go to and talk with everybody who's a vendor there.
Where is it?
It's usually like in Vegas, or always is in Vegas. Vegas is dope anyway, but it happens in Vegas, and they have all these after parties, and it's like just for industry people in the gun industry, sellers and things like that. So I wind up going. I got lucky, and when I went, I noticed, I was like, this is massive. Like, it is insane how big and how, like, 24/7 this event goes on. It never really stops. It's like networking at a party. Then when you're done with going to the expo, you go to another after party. You come back. You sleep for like maybe 30 minutes. You get back up. You do it again. And it's just a good time. It's exhausting, but it's fun. But I thought about this, and I was like, well, the gun industry has not been around as long as the martial arts industry. That's very easy to understand. We have had hands and feet longer than we have had firearms.
Yeah.
So like, so when I go to something like the Martial Arts Super Show, which is supposed to be our industry's big show and our expo, and I look around and I could walk around that, like all the booths, the entire event and everything like that, maybe in like an hour.
Yeah.
Why is the martial arts industry such a smaller industry than the gun industry? And then I start thinking about it. I look at like the people who are there and I start analyzing like, well, what type of representation is going on? Who is in charge? All the details. And the epiphany that hit me was this one simple truth. Martial arts is very self-deprecating to every other art. It's like anybody who goes to like a martial art, usually you go there because you were under the impression that that is the best one.
Right.
Like
And you
your
get
instructor will
smacked
try to,
quick.
yeah, like okay, I do jujitsu. Jujitsu's the best, right? Okay, I do taekwondo. Taekwondo's the best for whatever reason. The truth is that none of them are the best because we're talking about what is the particular standard of what you are judging this on, and
Yeah.
the real
Or
standard is
situational, right?
yeah.
Like if you're on your feet, striking is going to be more
Well,
advantageous.
not even that, because I think this is another downfall in the industry is we only look at it from a self-defense point of view when most, statistically, 75% of people who join martial arts never compete a day in their life. So if they were only there to learn how to fight, why doesn't everybody go to compete? Well, it's because most people don't go because they want to learn how to fight. And I know that that's difficult to understand and wrap people's minds around, but there are so many other reasons people go. Some people go because they want to lose weight.
Right.
That's it. They wanted to
Stay
lose weight
busy,
and they
stay
know that it's
active.
yeah, like, or they want a mentor. They want a friend. They want to learn a skill. But, like, at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that they want to learn how to fight.
Right.
And so, what I realized was in the gun industry, yeah, gun industry people are really, like, at each other's throats a lot. But whenever it comes time for somebody to start trying to take away guns from the gun industry or take away their rights or whatever that may be, 9 times out of 10, most of the industry is able to come together and fight for that particular cause.
Right.
And then they'll go back to their infighting, but usually, I'm not saying that's 100%, but the majority are able to fight together at one point in time. Whereas the martial arts industry, if something happened to Taekwondo, no other art would give a shit. They'd be like, oh, well, less competition. You know, if something happened to Jiu Jitsu, none of the other arts would give a shit. So no one really cares about everyone else in the industry. So it's an extremely selfish industry. The only way we're going to be able to really grow as an industry is we need to be able to be on the same page about at least some things. And so that's where I based my 5 rules on the page was, well, what is it that everyone, no matter what art you go to, can completely agree on? How can I bring everyone together? Well, might not be able to agree on everything that we like, but we can damn sure agree on everything we don't like. And
Right.
so that's kind of where everything started.
And for people that don't know, can you say the 5? Because this is
Yeah,
basically the foundational principles of what has helped grow this to where it is.
absolutely. So rule number 1 is no pedophiles. Sorry, I'm writing these down so that way I make sure I don't do over.
Fair.
But rule number 1 is no pedophiles. I'm pretty sure that we can all universally agree, unless you're probably a pedophile, that whoever is a pedophile probably shouldn't be around martial arts instruction because they will automatically be around children or will have access to kids. And, of course, how can that particular person teach me about discipline when they can't stop diddling children? So, rule number 1, no pedophiles. I don't think that any pedophiles should be allowed in the industry whatsoever. I think that once you've crossed that line, you do not get another pass. You were done. You're out, period. Rule number 2, don't lie about your belt rank and fight record. It's usually the very first question you're asked by a student is you
Right.
kind
What
of
belt
giving
are
your
you?
resume. Yeah, like what belt are you? Who did you train with? Have you fought before? If that's the opening conversation and dialogue that you have with a student and you lie about that, you'll lie about everything else.
For sure.
So if you're a blue belt, like here's another thing. If you're a blue belt in jiu-jitsu and you decide to open up an academy, cool. That's awesome. There are a lot of people who will get a lot of experience based off of what you know. You don't know everything, but no one knows everything. You just happen to be on the journey and they happen to be just a step behind you and you can guide them a little bit. Are you going to be the best? Hell no. But are you honest with them? If they walked up and they were like, yeah, I'm only a blue belt. How long have you been training? About a year and a half, 2 years. Really? Have you ever done any tournaments? No. Are you very good? No, I'm not very good at all. The consumer has the right to decide if they still want to train with you if you're honest. Now, if you lied, that's different. If you're like, yeah, I'm a black belt. And then,
Yeah, you can get a
okay,
black belt on Amazon. same day delivery. So
Yeah, especially when they have those Amazon deal days, you can get like
it's Prime. Ooh, it's Prime Day. What do I want to be in karate?
a.
Right.
The
Don't
next
be a
one
pedophile.
is
Don't lie about your belt record. Don't lie about your uh, or sorry,
fight.
your don't lie about your rank. Don't lie about your fight record.
Exactly. The next one is unsafe or shady business practices. So shady business practices are what most people would like put into a McDojo category. If you charge $7,000 a month for your class, I don't give a
Get
shit.
out of here. Yeah.
I don't care. I really don't care. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't think anybody would ever pay for it. And if you can convince people to pay for it, that's awesome. But I don't think that that's a problem because cost and how expensive something is subjective to the individual buying it. There are reasons Lamborghinis get bought. Are they affordable to everyone? No, they're not supposed to be affordable to everyone. That's not the point. That's not who they're going after. There's a reason that it costs you X amount of dollars if you want to get in a spaceship to be able to travel up to space and come back down. Is that affordable? Fuck no, it's not. But that's not who they're advertising to. But would we be like, oh, that's fucking ridiculous. You're charging me like $5 million to go to
Just don't
space?
join
No,
that school. Don't
exactly.
go.
If
Yeah.
they're
Don't go.
honest. Now, if they're doing shady business practices, the shady part would be if they're lying to you to milk you for more money. And by lying to you, I don't mean requiring you all to have the same uniforms. If you know that right off the bat, you have a decision as a consumer just not to go there if that bothers you.
Right.
But if you get there, they don't tell you that up front, and then all of a sudden it becomes a requirement. If they don't tell you about having to charge you for belt testings, if they don't tell you about extra fees, hidden fees, if they, you know, if they're open and honest about what they're saying to you, that's not shady. That's your decision as a consumer. If they're lying to you, if they're defrauding you, if they're ripping you off financially, that is much different. That's a shady business practice, and I think we should stop that. The next one, unsafe training practices and cult-like behavior. So unsafe training practices are something that you'll see all the time on my particular page. I talk about them. They range from things like the child in Taiwan who was only on his second judo class ever, and he was thrown so many times by his martial arts instructor while his uncle was there in attendance watching that he was put into a coma. He was in a coma for about 2-3 months before he passed away.
Jesus.
Now, you'll have those people out there who are fucking dumbasses who go, that's making him tough. No, it's not, you dumb shit. Like beating a child and
dead,
abusing
so
a child.
that's not really arguable. I mean,
Exactly. But you'll have people out there who are like, who will defend stupid shit, like somebody standing there while the coach tees off and punches the student in the head repeatedly. Like, we know, based off of research and science and evidence, and pretty much every scientific community involved knows that the more you're getting hit in the head and jarring your brain, the worse it is for you.
I mean that stuff to me, like the toughness argument is so dumb because there's within the martial arts world, the mixed martial arts world, there's scale to intensity. So if you go to like a family academy that has a lot of older people, 40s into their 50s, a huge kids class population, and then you got some young guys in there who are like maybe former wrestlers, high school athletes, whatever. That's not where you become a pro fighter. If you want pro fighter mentality and you want to go and you want to fight in Cage Warriors or Bellator or UFC or something and try to like move your career along, then go train at a fighter's gym where they train to fight each other and find out if that's for you, if that's the scale that you want to be at. But if you go into an academy and you go 100 when everyone else clearly can only go 70, now you're being an asshole.
And there are definitely some times out there where you get just a lot of misinformation in the industry about what is and what is not good training practices. And
Yeah, that's true.
you'll have people who most of the time have no fucking idea what they're talking about, who will go online and they'll justify all types of abuse. And they'll do it because of their own particular abuses that they had in their life, and they'll try, well, I had that happen to me, so there's nothing wrong with it. It's like, well, you do understand that when people get abused, they typically go on to pass that abuse to other people because they think that behavior is okay.
Yeah, because they have no metric to decide otherwise. It's what they know.
Yeah, it's kind of like the drunk uncle in the trailer park who watched like Roadhouse 50,000 times and can recite it, and he's like, and you're the you're the child, right? And this is your uncle.
Is
And he
this a
looks up
man
to
in
you.
your life? I'm like, are you calling for
No,
memory
man,
here?
but I run into these people all the time online, man. You're
Yeah,
like you can tell that this person just had someone in their life who gave them a ton of misinformation. And
totally.
yeah, here's a great example, perfect example. You ever seen the movie Waterboy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a scene in Waterboy where Colonel Sanders, his professor, is talking about why alligators are so angry, and he goes, "It's because of their medulla oblongata." And he goes, "No, it's not. My mama said it's because they have all them teeth and no toothbrush." And it's like, well, in his mind, as funny as that scene is, that's very much a reality for a lot of people. They
Yeah.
were told bullshit their entire life, and when someone hits them with the actual truth, they can't
It
process
sounds like a
that.
lie. It sounds like a
Yeah.
lie.
So, it's just
But
it's
wait,
ridiculous.
I wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned because I find this interesting, and I'm curious what the expression of this is to you for the account, just in your head. Cult-like behavior.
Yes.
So shady
So,
business practices and cult-like. What do you constitute as like cult-like behavior?
well, I'll give you an example. Like, for instance, you have over the years of not only studying these particular cults, but also speaking with cult experts, what I've kind of noticed is there's a very thin line between martial arts, religion, and a cult. Now,
Very true.
a lot of people in their minds think that you cannot separate religion and cult. Well, the truth is you can't separate anything from cult. The root word of culture is cult. It's the root word. So anything can potentially become a cult. The only thing that seems to change between what is a activity or what is a group and what is a cult is specifically the intentions of the leader. If, for instance, a martial arts instructor is teaching you martial arts and his goal is to use that specific skill to help you become better in whatever aspect of your life you're trying to be better at, that's all going outward.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help you. I have a standard. This is what I charge. I can provide you these things. That's it. You give me money, I give you service. That's all. The moment it becomes all about the person in charge, that's when it becomes a cult. And so what you wind up seeing is a lot of parallels between, let's say, even Christianity and martial arts schools. But you also see a lot of things that are very similar in cults and martial arts schools. For instance, Jiu Jitsu probably has one of the biggest cult-like things I've ever seen in martial arts. It's very universal. It's almost even universally accepted, by the way. And it's a term called the crianche. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Crianche.
Yeah, crianche. Look it up. And obviously, I'm not I don't speak Portuguese, so. But
I was gonna go with French, but I'm like, no. What is it? Okay, so explain it. What's a crianche?
and if I pronounced it terribly, that's because I'm from the South and I got to
We're
speak
just gonna
contemporary.
assume we did pronounce it terribly.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it. But yeah, so basically, it's a term that means traitor. It's a term that was based off of a character on a soap opera show in Brazil who was a very shady character, and that was his particular name. And so that had been now modified to mean a traitor in a martial arts school, and 9 times out of 10 doesn't actually apply to someone who's really a traitor. So you'll have schools that will not allow you to cross train in another facility. Why?
What?
I'm paying you for a service. So when I pay you for this service, I receive the service, and what I do outside of this facility is none of your fucking business. And a lot of
But
people have a
what
hard
if,
time.
to your previous point about honesty, what if this is communicated up front? It's part of their rules.
Well, again, like for instance, you have that opportunity to be taken advantage of anytime. So if anytime, sometime you walk into like a facility, let's say in terms of safety, and that particular instructor goes up to you and they say, today in class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you stand there, you're going to put your arms behind your head, and I'm going to tee off on your head because I want to condition you. Well, if you were not educated, you were still being harmed. So like, you can still be taken advantage of just because you're uneducated. So when people
Yeah.
go to martial arts schools, and this is the first time they go to a martial arts school, they might think that that's a standard when it's truly not. So now they're taking advantage of their students with cult-like behavior. So yes, that would still
I
count as
guess
cult-like
if
behavior.
I'm trying to just think about this out loud, I mean, it would be strange if you went to. I'm just thinking of another business that offers a service in exchange of goods. So you go to the dentist, and the dentist says, "I'll clean your teeth." You can never get your teeth cleaned anywhere else. You would give him double birds. Like, that's insane. You would never do that.
Well,
In fact, no business, even to the extent of like a high end country club, nobody has a prerequisite that you can know you can't a non-compete for a consumer doesn't exist actually. Now that
Except
I
in
think
martial
about
arts
it,
for
so
some
I'm like,
reason.
yeah,
And not all martial arts schools do this, but also you have to keep in mind the conditions in which you're going to a facility. Here's another thing, just to add to your particular point, that other services don't typically have. Usually, you do not assign someone particular personality traits before you ever meet them. But in martial arts, you do. It's strange. You think just because somebody has a belt around their waist that they have honor and integrity and respect
right.
and discipline. In martial arts, that's just given to the instructor. They haven't even earned it. You met them fucking once. Like,
And it's written on the walls, but that's just to further the idea of it. That's actually the more that I think about that, I feel like conceptually I get it. Like if you go back to, I'll use like just the Gracie family in jiu-jitsu, right? The Gracie family's in Brazil. Horian comes to the United States. He ends up propagating this through challenge matches and all this thing. There's this desire to protect their art form, right? The gentle art that they're creating and trying to spread and help people protect themselves. And so at the genesis of it, you want to keep it as close to the original as possible. That almost makes sense to me, but at the rate to which it's grown and how big it is now, as a stipulation and I'm thinking about this now out loud because I've never gone to a school as a drop-in and had to accept that information, and then the school that I'm part of here, that was obviously not part of the contract. But that would be kind of a stop in your tracks moment. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing? What do you mean I can't train it? It's one thing if it's like you get the stink eye from like your teammates if you're training at some other place you're going to compete against, sure. But to actually have it contractually obligated that you're not allowed to go anywhere, that should be a massive red flag.
well, usually that's not, that, again, that goes back to shady business practices, but usually that's not how that works. Like, that's not how any cult works. Being excommunicated from something.
They're not, this isn't communicated in the businesses that you're talking about or trying to expose. This is an after the fact thing.
Absolutely, 100%. Like, when you go to a particular gym, usually you don't find out about that kind of shit until you want to go explore and go train at other places. You usually find out when you're trying to go to so-and-so seminar. Yeah. So, like, for instance, I see the
like religious parallel.
Yeah, so I go to Martial Arts Studio A, and I've been there for like a year. I've never even voiced wanting to go to another facility, and even people who have already been there think that it's just common knowledge that you're not allowed to cross-train, so it's not even something that comes up. Right. You don't even think about asking, and then all of a sudden you decide that you're going to go over to another seminar. And by the way, this is something that has happened even recently in my DMs that I got sent about, where someone just went to another seminar, just a seminar in another facility, and in a group chat that belonged to like a lot of the women in their particular group chat, they said, hey guys, I'm going to be going to the seminar at this particular gym. If anybody wants to join me, I would love for you guys to come join me and we can go train at the seminar. The instructor, I guess, found out about this and ripped them apart for wanting to go train in another facility. They were like, how dare you? Like, this is going to make it seem like we're trying to dojo storm another facility. Why didn't you ask me my permission? And again, this is the cult-like mentality. I'm paying you for a service. I do not need your permission for anything outside this facility. I do not need it. Like, if I, again, like you were talking about earlier, which, by the way, very good on spotting that, because it's usually my next point, is no other service asks that. If I go to Publix to pick up some groceries, I don't have the cashier go to me and go, hey, man, there's a rumor you went to Walmart one time.
Yeah. Yo, if I see you at Safeway.
It's on. Like, don't you ever come back in this building again. But in martial arts, that happens. And what happens is people are lied to, and they're manipulated to the point where they think that that behavior is okay. They do not see it as a cult. Like, or here's another culty piece of shit that's fucking weird, right? A lot of people who join certain martial arts gyms, like, and again, this is a jiu-jitsu thing because I don't want people thinking that I'm only picking on other martial arts. Right. I can pick on jiu-jitsu just as well, and I do jiu-jitsu. But there are certain schools where you go to receive a promotion, like a belt promotion, and you line up and you go through the gauntlet. Are you familiar with the gauntlet?
Been through the gauntlet.
So why the fuck would I ever allow? I would never fucking allow this. Why would I ever allow you to whip me? I'm a grown fucking man. I paid my dues.
Check this. So I have an interesting reflection about this because I've also seen people not do it. I've seen people not do it. I've seen the social pressure around it. So my original, where I very first started, didn't do it. So I just didn't know. It was kind of like to your education thing, right? I just didn't know that was a thing. And then I got to another school, and they did. And so I just did it. And I'm thinking about this kind of in hindsight, like the religious parallels are very interesting. And I've actually thought about this a lot, just being someone who's personally not a very religious guy, but goes to jujitsu 5 days a week, right? The irony there. Like here I am, I'm wearing this robe, I'm tying my belt a certain way, I'm bowing to fucking deities, right? And then I'm doing this thing and I do it all the time. I do it. It's a huge part of my life. I think about it all the time. I train all the time. I think about how to get better at training. I watch stuff about getting better at training. I engage with everything martial arts, right? That is almost religious behavior, right? Other than the fact that I'm not praying or reading the Bible, but I'm reading Musashi, right? So like, it's like six one way, half dozen the other. But the thing with the gauntlet is, it was the first time in my life ever where I found myself doing something where I was fully questioning why I was doing it while I was doing it, which is like a very unique experience to have, especially just speaking for myself. I don't find myself in situations like that very much. I'm very much like yourself. I'm like, fuck that, dude. Nope. Or there's never a situation like that. And there I was in the middle of it. And I didn't really know how to feel about it, right? It's kind of an interesting, then you want to explain it. You want to justify behavior, right? 'Cause that's exactly what happens when something like this goes down in anything, in religion, whatever. So you research it. And then you find, if you go online, oh, this is really common. Tons of schools in Brazil do it. That's where it started. Tons of schools also don't do it very deliberately, choose not to. And so then you're left with this, what is this? How do I feel about it? How should I feel about it?
You know, you like, just to kind of like stop picking on jiu-jitsu. And by the way, I fucking love jiu-jitsu. I love training jiu-jitsu. I've been doing jiu-jitsu
and I love
now.
my academy.
Yeah, man. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a decade now. I'm very mediocre at it. I'm working on becoming better every day. But at the end of the day, those are the reason I bring up those examples for cult-like behaviors, because a lot of times in martial arts, people assume that because of the art that they are kind of safe from the behavior. You're not. You can't escape it. The thing is that you just have to be aware that it exists. And now imagine if you have never done any martial arts whatsoever and you go to a situation like that and everyone around you, like your particular situation, is encouraging this because you think that it's right. Now you become potentially the next person to pass that bullshit along to the next person, and so on and so on.
Or find yourself doing it.
Yeah, we all know that martial arts in general did not start off with belt system. That was something that came later. So when people say, well, this is very traditional, no, it is a tradition, but that doesn't mean that that's how it started off on day one. That's how this is done. And as we understand about humanity in general, we evolve past bullshit as we spot it as bullshit. I mean, we could be doing shit for decades, millennia, and then one day we'll all wake up as a group and go, fuck, we were doing that? Well, maybe we should just stop doing that thing, you know?
Well, and honestly, we can call a spade as two people that practice jiu-jitsu and obviously love it, or love martial arts, and are going to keep doing this for a long time. The belt system, because of the variance in skills, are you a purple belt? Are you a purple belt competitor? Are you a purple belt pro competitor? Are you a purple belt 25-year-old? Are you, are you purple belt and you're 50? The belts it's not what it's about, and you find that out really quickly, because if you're doing this still, you don't care about it. It doesn't really mean anything other than this, like you hit the nail on the head. You walk in, you see someone, you instantly assume certain things about them that you don't know to be true. So you go, oh, they're a purple belt, they're athletic, they have good pressure, they know this technique, they're honorable, they're a good teacher, whatever it is. Dude, it's a way to promote membership. Like it certifies that you're going to want to keep going humans like systems like that. You like advancement, to know that you're leveling up at something. So it's not complete BS. and that doesn't, I don't say this to detract or discredit from anyone who's achieved high belt levels at any level, but it does have a very clear purpose in driving business.
Well, I mean, I think also it's not a bad thing. I just think that most things like that can be corruptible. So I get asked all the time, because there is no regulating body to all martial arts. It does not exist. There is no standard at all whatsoever to start a martial arts studio. There's no regulating body. There's no rules to it. I could literally have never trained martial arts a day in my life. Tomorrow, go out and open Rob's all-you-can-eat Chinese food and Kung Fu Emporium. You come for the egg rolls, but you stay for the self-defense. And then after that, people, if I'm charismatic enough, people might just sign up. And there will be absolutely no checks and balances to stop that. Nothing.
And they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know the other.
Yeah, because people who have never done it don't know. And sometimes it's very difficult for the educated to remember what it's like not to be educated. We look at things from a much different eye. Yeah. And so another example of a question that I get often is, how do people still fall for this shit? And it's just this simple. It's the simplest example is always seems to be the one that makes people open their eyes a little bit. One, we can all be manipulated and taken advantage of. That's a fucking fact. The more you say that you can't, the easier it is to truly manipulate you because you have blinders onto the fact that somebody has a skill at what they're doing.
Yeah,
like
totally.
But when it comes down to martial arts, right? If I were to ask you to go to a mechanic and you weren't a mechanic yourself and you took your car there because the shit wasn't working and they lied to you, how do you know they are lying to you?
They have no idea.
You don't know? You don't have a clue because you're not.
And we're not even touching on a very, very important part that I think nothing parallels religion more to me than this fact. It's not a fact, but this thought is that when people find religion, what's most of the time happening in their life? Right? They're out of answers. They're down and out. They're looking for inspiration. They're looking for a mentor. They're looking for guidance. They've been abandoned by people that love them. They've been put down. They whatever it is, they're in an emotionally primed position to eat it all up, right? And then you go in and someone says, I totally understand how you're feeling. Come with me. I can take care of you. When not everyone, because like you said earlier, there's varying differences of why you would approach martial arts. Maybe you love the sport. Maybe you just got beat up. Maybe you want to stay healthy. So there's varying degrees. But there are a group of people that need martial arts really badly for self-confidence, for protection, for self-defense. And if you're looking for those answers and you went to the wrong school, you are going to eat it up so fast and never know otherwise.
Yeah, and just there's actually even examples in modern martial arts where there are highly skilled martial artists who have been taken advantage of by con artists. So even if you are educated, that still does not mean that you won't be taken advantage of when you are vulnerable. But you are very much correct, as vulnerability is usually what breeds the opportunity for a con artist to take advantage of someone.
Yes.
Very much like when you want to escape a position, it's really easier to escape the position when they're in transition than
right.
when you're
instead of fighting for it as hard as you can.
Yeah, I'll just wait, and when the transition happens, there'll be space that I need to be able to get my underhook or whatever I need, right? So con artists operate at a con artist level, and we think in a very strange way because a con artist or a cult is always something that we never think that we could be in. Right. What we fail to understand is that logic doesn't match any other logic in your life. For instance, I'll go this route, right? Oh, and by the way, just because we haven't touched on it, and I'm sure somebody listening is probably frustrated as shit, rule number 5 is no touch knockouts. No touch knockouts and mislabeling technique. And what I mean by mislabeling technique is if you're doing Taekwondo and you're doing acrobatic kicking, that's awesome. I love that stuff. Right. I think it's cool as shit. If you're doing cardio kickboxing and you're trying to call cardio kickboxing actual self-defense, that's bullshit. You're giving someone a false sense of confidence. Now, will they lose weight? Will they have benefit? Yes. But don't mislabel it because that's very difficult for someone who's never done it before to navigate when you're clearly lying to them about the validity of what you're doing. And let's be honest, you can't knock people out with your mind, so that's pretty self-explanatory, right?
I mean, to before we get too lost in the woods here, like that stuff, that stuff is the most impressive thing to me that people buy into, because, and maybe I'm completely out on this, but if I'm watching Rob and some dude pretend that Rob has mind powers that knock this guy back and fall over, I'm going, let me try it. That's the first thing I want to do, is let me just step up and this is absolute bullshit. There's no way that that's real. And then, so that's happening all over the place. I feel like there's more videos of people doing these like stupid pressure point where they take on 6-7 people, or they just whatever, like move at someone and the person falls back. Like, how is that serious, dude?
So there's so many segues to go with this, man. You're knocking on some of my favorite shit in this industry. So
yes.
I'll just ask you a couple questions real fast, and then we'll touch on that, because these questions are actually important to understand.
I feel like I'm about to be manipulated.
Absolutely. So here's question number one. Are you a doctor?
No.
Do you think you'd be better at surgery than a doctor?
No.
Are you a mechanic?
No.
Would you be better at fixing a car than a mechanic?
Nope.
Are you a con artist?
No.
Do you think you'd be better at understanding cons than a con artist?
I feel like I'm supposed to say yes to one of these, but no.
Exactly.
No.
You wouldn't be able to. That's the point. Is that when it comes down to every other aspect of our life, we can look at something and just understand we don't know it, because we're just simply not educated in it. But when it comes to being taken advantage of or conned, even with absolutely no training whatsoever, we all think that we can't be manipulated or conned by someone who literally does it for a living. And we assume that everyone who's taken advantage of is a complete moron. The truth is that's not how it works. That's not how any con works. The con doesn't work because you're so smart or you're so, like on guard. The con works because you are so on guard. You do not think that you could be taken advantage of, so you never research con artists. You never look into how those games are played. You never look into manipulation because you think you're smarter than it. You already know you can't do surgery. You already know you can't fix a car, but for some reason, all of a sudden, when we start talking about con artists, we forget that that's a trade. It's a profession. It's a skill. It's something you have to develop.
Okay, but so what are they doing in this? When
Well,
obviously you've researched it enough, and
sure.
and I'd say you have a black belt in understanding this.
Well, so you yourself can look at someone and look at them knocking someone out with someone's mind, and then your automatic thing is, let's try it, right?
Right.
Okay. So you look at somebody doing that activity and you go, that's bullshit. That's impossible.
Right.
All right. Well, how about let's put that again on any other skill? So if you were to say, let me try that. Let's say we see somebody who's a professional NBA player and they just sink in threes all day long, right?
But the difference is those seem possible.
Well, I'm going down a line of logic,
Gotcha,
right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So they could do it. Can you?
I mean, but that's the thing. Maybe.
No. The answer is no.
No, but let's say on a free throw, you're watching someone just drain free throws. There's an honest possibility. It's a super low probability, but I might be able to actually get up there and drain a couple in a row.
But that's the cognitive dissonance. That's like the whole point of the line that I'm going down. When you look at somebody sinking threes in a basketball game, you go, yeah, it's possible. You can't fucking do it, but it's possible, right? When you look at somebody fixing a car and they fix the car, you can't do it, but you look at it and go, yeah, I guess that's true. But let's go to the mechanic and let's say he literally just fiddled around with your car and he literally did nothing, and now the car still runs. He might still be able to charge you full price for fixing something that didn't need to be fixed. You would never know the difference because you're not educated in that particular skill. So if you go to a mechanic and you go, my car's not running. Yeah, he might need to replace your battery. He could tell you that. But then he can tell you he also needs to replace 500 or 600 things. And you're like, shit, that sucks. Never question it. Pay the man, be taken advantage of, and then drive your car away and never know you were taken advantage of. Well, when you look at it from a perspective of people who are uneducated at something, it becomes so easy to understand how easy it is to manipulate people.
Are you talking... So I don't get lost here. Are you talking about the people in the audience are kind of like because what I'm saying is if I'm in the audience and I'm like, that's bullshit. And then I step up there and they try it. It's not going to happen.
Well, the manipulation wouldn't be like, let's just do this. What you're missing is all of the things that led to the manipulation. So again, going back to the car thing, if
I
you
see what
walked
you're
up,
saying. Yeah.
if you go to the mechanic and the mechanic says, "Hey man, your battery is the reason that your car is messed up. Also, you got a couple other issues here. You want us to go ahead and take advantage, or not take advantage? Do you want us to go ahead and fix that for you?" And like you were not educated in that thing, you would say, "Yeah, just go ahead and take care of those things." You just got conned. The thing is that along that line, you never would discover you got conned. You never would. You
I
would
no,
never
I
know you were
okay. I see the point, but so what's happening on the con line, on that line of conning? In let's say,
so.
let's go with
If
no
I was
touch.
going,
Maybe you're going there.
yeah, I am. That was the
Okay,
goal.
cool.
But the goal was to make sure that you're on that there's some understanding
I
that you
see. Yeah,
can
I see. Okay,
possibly
I
be
see your point now.
manipulated.
Yeah,
So now that you are aware that there is a possibility you could be manipulated and taken advantage of without knowing that, now put yourself in the shoes of someone else. If I showed up and I was educated and I saw someone getting taken advantage of, it'd be much different. So if I looked at that person and I also was a mechanic and I was standing there by this other mechanic and that mechanic was taking advantage of this person, that would be so easy to spot. You'd be like, "Yo, dude, no, that doesn't need to be fixed. Why are you fucking
yeah,
telling
yeah,
me?"
yeah, yeah, yeah. Got you.
So now put yourself in a position of somebody who's starting off with absolutely zero knowledge whatsoever.
Right.
They showed up to a martial arts class and they've been there for years being manipulated and taken advantage of through different logics and different manipulations, just like any other cult. For instance, if you look at people like in a lot of televangelists do the whole like
Right. Where
power
they're
of
like,
God thing, right?
yeah, yeah,
How
yeah,
could they
yeah.
possibly? They didn't. That didn't happen on day one.
Right.
You're showing up on day one from an educated point of view. You're not showing up 5 years later from a non-educated point of view. It's
Yeah,
two
yeah.
different things. So when these people wind up getting to the point where they are being knocked out, they've been taken advantage of for a very long time. And
Right.
like any other cult, there's some things that go along with that. Little seeds planted over long periods of time, isolation, and the threat of excommunication. If you wind up going there and I'm able to isolate you from every other source of information, I can say anybody else who has these particular issues with what I'm doing, and I can give you reasons why they're wrong, and I can at least isolate you enough to believe me over them. That's charisma. That's practice. That's
Yeah.
patience. That doesn't just come with day one manipulation. It's a skill. It's very much a skill that you develop. How did David Koresh? Actually, we'll go to this one. I remember it might have been David Koresh, the gentleman who ran the cult where he took his entire cult out of the United States and eventually made them drink Kool-Aid. Jones,
No, that was
Jim Jones.
yeah, yeah.
It was Jim Jones. Like logically, any of us would look at that and go, "That's a fucking cult." The government, our U.S. government, looked at that and said, "This isn't safe," which is the entire reason that they left the United States is because
Right.
they were being investigated. So how in the world could he convince all of those people not only to leave the entire country, their families, their ideologies,
Crazy man.
and kill themselves?
To
It's
get on the
not like
comet, dude. Duh.
he's very, very good at manipulating people in a way that it's very difficult for us to understand if we didn't start off at zero with that person.
Did you
Like so,
see recently the one about the LDS, the documentary about the Latter Day Saints church, where the guy basically convinced, at one point, thousands of people to be part of this really abusive division of Latter Day Saints, and it ended up at one point he ended up like there were pictures of him in Vegas with hookers and Harley Davidsons and like all this material stuff when he was like started to realize that he was going to get caught for everything. Disgusting, man. Absolutely disgusting. I guess I've never really thought about the parallels between the martial arts manipulation stuff and things like that. But now I get your point and the logic line there of like the people in the audience aren't, and maybe we'll talk about actually the documentary here for a second, but the people in the audience aren't professionals. And to your point, we, the viewer, don't know how long they've been participating, how long they've been groomed to witness and something that is complete bullshit, but they've bought into over time. And it's a great example with, and I mean, the Jim Jones thing, one, but you could extrapolate that out to any other cult in the history of the world or United States, where you take people and it's not like they move out of the United States and drink the Kool-Aid their first day there. They do that on their 780th day there or whatever. And so it takes time. So you're kind of saying that these videos that you get inundated with and the stuff that's posted on the account, these people have probably been taking advantage of the people that are present for a long time.
Absolutely. Or even in Indonesia, which is a great example of what happens when bullshit goes unchecked. So
just Indonesia in general.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and specifically Indonesian Salat. I'm not saying all of Indonesia believes this, and there is a big movement now to fight against what they call public duping, which is like the shaman, the nonsensical voodoo magic stuff that they try to bring in. But really what it boils down to is just a long-term manipulation of an entire group of people to believe something that's just not fucking true. Like, we know that Indonesian Salat was developed and started in Indonesia. We know that. We also know that the Muslim religion didn't start in Indonesia. It's like any other religion, right? It was brought there. Right. And so, just like any other religion, it spreads and things like that. So when the Muslim religion winds up coming to Indonesia, what happens is you start to have eventually people who realize the power of religion. And so when you're in for lack of better words, like a third world country, very poor country, you don't have a lot to look forward to. You don't have a lot of hope or options in terms of being able to be wealthy. What happens is you wind up looking at other things to look forward to. And what would happen was somewhere along the line, there was a group of people who decided to start mixing in some of the more hokey things in the Muslim religion and take advantage of that by mixing it with Salat to convince people they had supernatural powers. And so now you have things like Tenaga Dalam, which translates to inner power, which is what their version of Chi would be. Right. And so you'll see them knock people back or they can't be hit. Hell, I posted a video today of a guy making a motorcycle have Tenaga, like giving it this Tenaga Dalam power, and then people are trying to attack the motorcycle in Salat uniforms and just flying all over the place. Yeah. But and so that, like, we look at that and we go, that's fucking ridiculous. But if you grew up with that as a structure of belief that this is real, then over the years of you being a child and growing up to be an adult, you find all the reasons that it is real and you usually don't find all the reasons it isn't because you've been indoctrinated into that belief structure. Then it gets really bad. So we look at that, we look at Tenaga Dalam, we laugh our ass off, right? Because we're not involved in the cult. It's funny because we're not in the cult. Yeah. But we don't know what it's like to be a child and to be told that every day of your life that that's real. We don't know that. We don't come from that place. Our mentality's different. So then you have something called Debus, which is where the real crazy shit starts to happen. So Debus, for lack of better words for a definition, is self-mutilation without harm. So when you look up things like a Debus, you'll see some things like people like taking chainsaws to their legs.
Wait,
or
straight up?
Yes. Or people like taking machetes and cutting their faces, or razor blades and cutting their tongue, or eating fluorescent light bulbs. This is all stuff I can't post. Anytime I've ever tried to post this stuff up, Instagram always flags it because of how fucking brutal it is.
Oh my God. That sounds terrible.
It is horrific. But here's the bit.
I can't watch that shit.
So the bit is that is all a con. It's a magic trick. But it's a magic trick with consequences. So when you have like it's like these large festivals where like you'll have 20, 30, 50 people all cutting themselves with machetes and it looks so bloody and gross. Then they'll wipe their face and there's no cut. Because it was a magic trick. They'll take two chemicals. They'll rub one chemical on their face or they'll rub one chemical on their arm and you'll see it quite a bit. It's a part of the bit. Where they'll take the chemical number one and they'll rub it all over their arm. And to you, when you're looking at this from the outside perspective, it looks like they're protecting their arm with the Tenaga Dalam or the Chi. And they'll just rub it in there. Then they'll take a prop, a sword, that is fairly dull, sometimes only in one section, so I can chop up several things with the top of the blade. But when I hit myself with the bottom of the blade, it doesn't hurt, or vice versa. Then I chop myself in the arm. Exactly. So chemical number 2 is in my mouth. And what they'll do is they'll saw their arm, and you'll see them blow the liquid onto their arm. And you'll see this. And then as they're blowing the liquid onto their arm, what they are telling people is it's water, and they're just trying to make sure that their arm isn't bloody enough so that way you can see the cut. But then when they're done, they'll just wipe it away, and there's no cut. So when we understand that it's a magic trick, it becomes kind of like a funny, interesting bit. Like, oh, I get it. Like it's just a bit.
Yeah, until
But
someone
then,
tries it, right?
then you have some of the most horrific shit I've ever seen in my fucking life. Like sometimes I wish some of the shit I've seen doing this job I had never seen. But if I don't see it and I don't talk about it, then no one knows it happens. I saw an 8-year-old slit his throat and kill himself because he believed that this was a real thing. He believed that he had this ability that he could not be cut by the machete because he was manipulated and seen other people do it. Like,
That's so fucked
I,
up, man.
there's a video that we have even in our trailer for our sizzle reel for our documentary of a group of kids. They're like between the ages of what seems to be like teenage years, 12 to like 16. And they're all in like Salat uniforms. They have their sashes on. They're all laying down side by side on their stomachs in a field. The camera's kind of zoomed in, and then it zooms back a little bit, and you can see that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people in attendance of what's about to happen. And they're all watching. No one's stopping this. No one says no. No one tries to intervene because they believe wholeheartedly in this inner power. As the camera backs out, you can see what seems to be a car ramp, what you would usually drive a car up on into a truck with, right? Then you back up and you see a truck. So now you get the picture. There's a ramp, there's a truck, there are kids laying on their stomach right in front of this car ramp. The problem is that the bit only really works in a muddy area, like with the goo and shit, or when the surface is kind of squishy. So that way, if the truck did run over them, it just kind of presses them into the ground and kind of disperses the energy, and they don't really get hurt. But these people don't think that way. The people in that particular group didn't understand that if this truck goes up onto this ramp, it is going to land on the first kid. And it did. And it killed that kid instantly. Then the truck drives over the second child, and the truck stalls out. And it's just there. And you get to witness this child just shaking. And he's trying to escape, and he cannot. No one is trying to stop this. Everyone is watching. The third kid in that line was smart, and he backs out, and the truck runs over the other children. Then, after the demonstration is over, the parents realize, oh my God, my child's dead. The first parent runs up and is trying so hard to wake this child up and cannot do it. The second parent runs over to the second child, who is now unconscious for some reason, I'm assuming due to lack of oxygen, and they're trying to wake the kid up, and they eventually do. But the first kid is dead. All because of these beliefs that we are looking at from an outside point of view, and we just can't seem to grasp that these people might actually believe it, when in their heart they do, and at the detriment of the expense of their children, their health, their safety, all because some asshole decided, you know what, I'm going to manipulate these people and take advantage of them by convincing them they have superpowers that they do not have. And so when I see shit like that, when I see these cases of fucking pedophilia, when I see these cases of fraud, when I see the cases of rape in our industry, and everybody turns a fucking blind eye to it, I say, fuck that. We should do something about that. And so I get up every goddamn day and I post about it every day, no matter how much bullshit I have to see, because somebody has to speak about this. We can't just keep ignoring it, or you get what's happening in Indonesia. It becomes acceptable. It becomes the status quo. It becomes okay. And it's fucking not. Sorry if I got a little heated.
No, dude. I mean, one, that's completely unacceptable and like disgusting. I there's so much to think about on like a moral level there, but that's fucking appalling. When along the, maybe you can give me like a mini timeline here, along the creation of McDojoLife and it becoming what it is now, when did you realize like responsibility?
The first time someone said thank you. It's a weird thing. So I started off McDojoLife on Facebook, and originally what I would do is I do long form essays. And so it was all very serious when I first started. It was like, these are specifically bullet points of why this particular person has done what they have done, all very serious. But no one paid it any attention. And every day, just like I do now, I have posted a different fraud, a different issue, a different topic every day. Or even a different technique, because sometimes, the mislabeling techniques is a part of this as well. But I've done that every day, and what I realized
for
how
long?
I mean, I think I probably was at it for about 6 months before a change happened. So like for about 6 months, I was doing the long form essay thing where every day at night I would take my time and write these long forms. And then like one day I just didn't have time to do it. And so like I just posted like a funny video. Like it was very out of like the ordinary. But when I came back to it after I woke up the next day and looked at it, it was like the most popular video I had seen. And it was either waking up, you got to figure this is like a fucking decade ago and a moment in time. But like it was either like I posted it and then went to work, or I went to sleep and woke up. But anyway, I left it alone and I came back to it. And when I did, it was like the most popular thing I had ever posted. And I was like, well, fuck. Like putting all this time and effort into this and no one's listening to me. But then when I half-ass it, people listen to me. And I was like, maybe the issue isn't what I'm saying, it's how I'm saying it. So I started saying less. And now you kind of get the standard of what I do, which is like one word, two sentences, one sentence. And it leaves open dialogue and conversation. And when that happens, you wind up getting people with all kinds of different viewpoints coming together, even the frauds, and they all speak their side. And then people become
to be.
Yeah, I can kind of like, one, it educates me because I can see other people's viewpoints. I haven't said everything that's needed to be said when I make a post. It leaves things vague enough to where some people even think that I am the person who's posting it, which is fucking hilarious to me. But it leaves it like very vague, and by doing that, there's something to be said about dialogue in the industry. It's opened up a dialogue where we can talk about things that might be more controversial issues that people dodge. Right. And it shows a lot. But, you know, after a while, I started to be able to actually speak a little bit more about like really fucked up shit, because I kind of at that point started to become the standard. Oh, well, you're talking about this. Here's something you should look into. And then you start to see like the more egregious and ridiculous things. And then people say, thank you. I really appreciate the videos that you do. It made me look at my own art and made me realize it wasn't for me. And I went over to a different art and it's made me so much happier. Thank you for saying this about so-and-so because I've been studying under so-and-so and I had no idea that they were a pedophile. Thank you for calling out this person because I was a victim of them as well. I don't want to talk about it publicly, but I do appreciate the fact that they were called out. You know, you start getting those messages and you realize, fuck, like I thought I was just kind of being a dick to these people because someone needed to be a dick to them. But now I realize like there's responsibility here I wasn't expecting.
So
you know?
with responsibility, right, that this will continue to grow. It's going to continue to grow, especially with what you have on deck and how it's spreading. Have you ever been wrong or found out later that you were wrong? Because it is a big responsibility. And the accusations that are being made on the account, I mean, these are some serious accusations for people. When true, that's like...
They're fact. There's a reason. Yeah. Like, I'll give you like
have you been wrong? Right? Have you been wrong?
Yes, I have been wrong. And I'd have no problem being wrong. I think that it's important to admit that when we're wrong so we can adjust. So I can think of literally up to this point only one time that I've made a mistake that I truly regretted. And I wasn't even incorrect. I was just uninformed about knowing what led to that.
Okay.
And so
the outcome wasn't wrong. It was the lead up.
It was that I didn't understand the situation. I probably, if I would have understood the situation, never have posted about them. Mm-hmm. But I have had opportunities to be able to work and help people because of it. So I'll give you an example, right? So there was a lady who posted a mount escape. And it's like day one mount escape. Bridge, trap the arm, trap the leg, bridge and roll over, you know, like day one mount escape, right? And she did it like fucking wrong. Like it's just wrong. It's not correct at all. She just kind of like rolls over and the person just happens to fall off. I'm like, that's never going to fucking work because they're going to post, right? And so not incorrect in posting that the technique was wrong. But then the lady contacted me. And when she contacted me, she told me that apparently her husband had been in some extreme accident and that he was no longer able to teach and that she and her husband were involved in this business together and now she had to carry the weight of being able to continue the instruction without him being there. Now, she was fairly educated in some things, but jiu-jitsu was not the thing that she was educated in. And unfortunately, her husband is in a position where he was not able to communicate all the details to her. I'm not going to talk about their personal shit,
fair.
But just understand that it was bad. And so when she told me the story, I was like, well, I need you to understand from my perspective that even though these things are happening to you, that particular technique is something that someone might have to rely on to protect their life. And so if you were teaching that and that becomes ingrained to them and they get in a position where they do have to do this day one bridge escape and been taught wrong, they're only going to get one shot at doing it. And so if they decide to try to do it your way, they've educated themselves poorly, they might end up hurt. And so after we talked though, and I understood her position, she herself took down her video. She herself said, I'm open to having somebody come here and teach me how to do it correctly. And so it wasn't like it was one of those things where she wanted to go out of her way to purposely teach shit wrong. She just didn't know any better. And how she was taught was poor. And so I took it down immediately. And had I had that conversation with her beforehand, I would have never posted it because my goal would be to help her and get her an instructor to come in. I did find an instructor to work for them pro bono to teach them some jiu-jitsu to make sure that they can fix up whatever was in their curriculum that had it. So that way they were at least better educated. So that would be one of those things where it's like, well, you're right. What she was teaching is bullshit. But should I have ever posted it to begin with? Because this is someone's livelihood and life that I wasn't necessarily understanding the situation. So that would probably be the biggest example. But other than that, man, there's a reason I've never been sued. I've been doing this for a decade. I do my research. I make sure I look into what's going on. If I see something that's bullshit, I call it bullshit. But every once in a while, you get surprised with some shit and you're like, fuck, well, should I have posted it? I believe that the technique is still wrong. But what are the consequences at that point for that person's family? Did I just fucking railroad them in a position where they really did want help and to be educated? So it's more of an obligation. Sometimes doing the right thing, you might not necessarily do the right thing in the right way.
Yeah, that was my next question on there, was about the vetting process, because obviously you can look at police records and things like that. That's pretty clear cut, right? I mean, you look at a police record, it's public, you can post about it. But some of the less clear-cut things, I mean, especially with that record, to do this a decade and not get sued, you have to have a pretty clandestine approach on choosing, and especially as someone who creates content and knows the importance of being consistent and always have something to put out to help grow an audience. Do you ever feel like you're walking that line between I need to put forth something and I need to choose the right thing, and maybe this story or this thing isn't quite ready, but I'm going to do it anyway?
Fuck no. Absolutely not.
Good.
Fuck no. Not even a little no. Fuck no. I think that there should be, in the long run of trying to really describe what it is I do, I get asked, by strangers sometimes. You get introduced and you start talking about, jobs. And somebody goes, well, what do you do for a living? And I go, fuck, that's hard to explain. Well, at the long run, at least up to this point in my career, my understanding of what my job has become is an investigative journalist.
I was going to say, it seems very much like journalism.
Yeah, it's like I'm discovering things in a very weird way. It reminds me of Ripley's Believe It or Not, when Ripley was just discovering weird shit and people were like, yeah, that's not fucking true. And then he was like, no, it's true. Look, here's the shrunken head. Yeah. I videotaped the tribe. That's what it feels like sometimes. But I think that when it comes down to having some type of journalistic integrity will save you a fuckload of headache.
For sure.
If I had nothing to post, that would be the greatest day of my goddamn life. That's the point. The point of what I'm doing is to eventually put myself out of business. Right. If I'm so good at my job that people stop fucking up, then you would never hear from me. That'd be amazing. I'd be sitting on the beach somewhere with a margarita, slammed drunk, just smoking weed and talking about jiu-jitsu with some random stranger on a beach. Would be amazing. But guess what? That's not the case. No matter what, there will always be people trying to take advantage of people. What I might be able to do, though, is I might be able to stop some people from being able to from being taken advantage of. I might stop some people from joining a cult. And what is the value of one person's life or well-being? Well, there is no value to that. Each person's life in general, if they're a good person, is priceless. And so if I can stop one person from joining a cult, I did my fucking job. If I did this for 30 years and I was able to help one fucking person, I did my job. Now I know for a fact that I've been able to help more than that, but that's what keeps me going. Like, you stay with it. And if I did, by the way, have a day, which does happen, where I'm like, well, fuck, no one got raped, no one got defrauded, no one got murdered, no one took advantage of anybody, I just make original content. That's
Right.
it. I just make original content. So, like, if you notice, by the way, over the years, I've been able to start making more original content, which to me is a victory. Because eventually what's going to happen is people are going to realize, like, well, that Rob guy, he kind of fucking sucks, but I like what he was doing, so I'll look at his original content, I guess. And then people, like, eventually do, like, the turnaround for me, anyway.
Right.
Like, my YouTube has blown up over the last, like, year. And now people are like, oh, well, the original content's not that bad. And I'm like, cool. So that means that there's room for that as a career. But
Right.
also I can do the other thing and continue that. And hopefully if I ever do put myself out of business, because there aren't that many cults anymore, there aren't that many frauds, I'll just do the other thing. I'll do the original content thing.
Well, I mean, it seems quite the contrary that you're really about to put yourself in business. I mean, going to tell me a little bit about what was it like going to ADCC? I mean, did you ever think that starting something like this, writing long form essays on Facebook and then exposing the fakes and then kind of continuing down this journalistic road, having the integrity, which really, I thought that this conversation would be much more comical, and I've welcomed the fact that it's actually been kind of serious in some regards, but to have the integrity to make sure that you're doing this thing the right way, to grow it the right way, to expose what needs to be exposed, but not thwart people's livelihood where it's not necessary, to now be in a position where you're being invited to ADCC, you're getting put in full Nelsons by Jocko. I mean, it's kind of seems from a bystander that it's going like this all of a sudden. Does it feel like that to you? Like, what was it like going there under the pretense in which you went?
Well, one, thank you for saying that, because that makes me feel good about the job.
Yeah.
Man, from outside perspective, this thing's going great. But like it's a fucking weird, man. Like I had a moment that kind of really changed my perspective on how I look at the job, I guess. It was very surreal. I was going to California, and Mike Beltran is a homie. The referee, Mike Beltran. He's fucking great. Love that dude to death. He's just been nothing but a cool dude and a good big supporter over the years. And
Was
I
he
just
how do you meet him? He was just like a fan of.
he liked the page, and we hit it off, and we chit chat, and then but I had this moment where he offered to pick me up from the airport, and I was like, dude, that's really nice of you. I did like we've never met, and so like I didn't expect you to offer that. He's like, I got you, brother, not a big deal. So then I'm like, something happened in I had two flights. I had a layover, and then I had to get on the second flight. So I get dropped off, and there's like this massive delay for my second flight, like over an hour. And I hit Mike up, and I was like, hey, dude, I'm going to be like over an hour. Don't worry about it. He goes, dude, not a problem. I'm already at the airport. I'll just wait for you. I was like, like I'm going to be over an hour late. He was
His
like,
manipulation worked on you.
Yeah, and I was like, that's not a big deal. And he's like, I got you, brother. So, and then I got there, and we just had a fucking good time. Smoked some cigars. We like had some lunch, and we just chilled. He wanted nothing from me. I wanted nothing from him. It was not because of anything else other than the fact that we had a mutual love for the industry.
Right.
And we sat down, and I had fucking Peruvian food for the first time, because like he was like, yo, you gotta have some Peruvian food. I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll try it. But it was just two people hanging out. None of the other shit weighed. It wasn't because of how many followers I had. It wasn't because he was on TV. It wasn't because of any of that shit. It was simply because we had a mutual love for the martial arts. Nothing was asked of each other. And that was like this beautiful, surreal moment of really, at the end of the day, yeah, all that shit's cool, right? The followers and people inviting you to shit and all that good stuff. But what's really kind of neat is just understanding how small the industry really is. Yeah. And how many people are just good fucking people in this industry. They just are good people. They want fucking nothing from you. And so over the years, it's kind of been like that. Like, just you wind up meeting people. No one asks for the goddamn selfie. No one wants to picture with you. No one wants you to do content. Like, there are those times where business is business and you do those things. But, even with the Jocko thing, like me and Jocko, when I first met him, was at ADCC. You were talking about him putting me in the full Nelson. That was the first time I'd ever met him, and like over the years, he's just been so polite and kind and generous without me ever meeting him face to face. And when I first met him for the very first time, he said, "How you doing, Rob?" He goes, "How's things going?" And he treated me just like we had been buddies for years. And it was just like this. That shit's cool to me.
I
That's
think
like
that's one thing about martial arts I find really special. And I mean, again, you could draw funny parallels to like religion here with my exact example. Just swap the Jiu Jitsu Academy out for a church. But I was in Kauai recently, and I found a school there. I brought my gi. I wanted to train, wanted to keep up training while we were there. And I went and I trained at Longman Jiu Jitsu, which is like the Ruka sponsored Jiu Jitsu on Kauai. And they were so rad. Like, walked in the door, I was like, "Hey, I was wondering if I could do drop-in class." Like, 100%. Professor introduced himself. He was an awesome dude. Had been there for like 20 years. The students were incredible. Everyone was super respectful. And I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. You can go to any country in the world, and if you do a little bit of research, you can find, and this is not just true for jiu-jitsu. I'm sure this is true for Muay Thai. This is true for karate, Kempo, whatever. Like, you can go and you can find instantaneously, it's like-minded people that you're going to share varying degrees of values. And then on top of that is the work part of it. Like, you put forth effort, and that's a unique thing to do. I think it's one of the reasons like CrossFit is so popular. So you get people that don't know each other, they get in a room, they work really hard together, and it builds camaraderie. And so you just have this. Like, that's a cool part about martial arts. You can take a guy like Mike Beltran, you go meet him. Dude picks you up from the airport, and he's just cool. Like, I think that's kind of unique. You can't be like, "Oh, I run like a journal for the MLB," and then some like a all-star pitcher's like, "Yo, dude, I'll just pick you up from the airport and give you a ride to the game." It's very the opposite. It's like, "Oh, I don't know, who do you know here? Like, what do you want from me?" Everyone's kind of like sneaky, and it's just not like that. It's very. I've even found it with like the podcast thing, like this, to reach out. I don't know anything about you on a personal level, but to even answer and be like, "Dude, 100%, let's have a conversation." To talk to Marcos Pumpo Damata is like, damn, that guy, he's just willing to talk about martial arts to me. It's just cool. It's unique. It's something special about this industry that everyone is like welcoming like that,
It's powerful, man. And I don't I don't know if anybody knows what my symbol represents, but the Tory is obviously something that's very special to a lot of people. It just basically signifies, for anybody who doesn't really know, to sum it up, basically a sacred place. Like, usually when you see a Tory, you're usually crossed through the Tory gate and it becomes a holy land or a sacred place for you, however you want to describe that. But if you notice, there are two scars on mine. And so there's a reason for that. One, it does represent the two scars on my face. Right. That is one where it started. But then it also represents the fact that even though martial arts in general is this very sacred thing that we need to protect, we have to understand that it has flaws. There are flaws in this industry that we cannot ignore if we want to keep it important, if we want to keep it sacred, if we want to protect it. You have to admit when something has flaws, just like your body. If we don't identify the cancer and we don't remove the cancer will spread. And so it's the same thing with your car. When you don't fix that one little thing on your car, it might fuck up 3 other things in your car. Next thing you know, your car doesn't work anymore. And so I think that when it comes to martial arts, those things, those moments of just that connectivity with somebody else with no other reason other than the fact that you both share this mutual love for something, that's powerful. And we should preserve that, I think.
What are the scars on your head from?
Oh, yeah, everybody sees me with a hat, so this is like one of the rare times that I don't have a hat. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know, I have hair. Everybody assumes
surprise,
this like little tiny bald man. But so I have this huge scar. Can you see it?
Yeah. Well, I actually, the first time I'd ever seen it was in the video with Jocko, because you take your hat off to do the full Nelson, and I was like, damn, I wonder. Then I saw on the Tory, I was like, oh, wait, maybe that's like a headscar reference thing, but he's always got the hat on. What are those from? Or that one from?
So I have 2 scars back there. One's a huge one, and then the other one's a tiny one. The tiny one was actually from a bone graft. It was a part of all the surgeries that I had as a child. They just removed a piece of bone and put it in my face.
Yep.
But the other one is actually from me and my stepbrother just being morons. So we were just like, we were playing a game of hide and seek, man. And so like, he was supposed to be trying to find me, and I hid. And we used to have this huge, when I was a kid, my
that's
parents.
That's a massive scar for a hide and seek game.
Oh, when you hear about how it happened, you're gonna cringe. So I'm hiding, and he hid under a truck, and I didn't know he was under this truck. And so I like come out of the house and I'm like peeking around, and our home base where you were like, oh, I win if I tag this particular thing was a set of steps. They were concrete steps. And so I'm looking around and I don't see him because he's hiding under this truck, which was like right next to the steps. Super smart on his part. I'm like hauling ass to try to get there just in case he pops out a tree or something. So I'm running full force. And he reached out from under the truck to tag my leg. Well, when he did, my leg hit the back of my other leg, and I tripped. And I fall headfirst into those concrete steps, and I woke up immediately in the hospital. Like, I tripped, bam, I just woke up. Like, hours of my time of my life had disappeared, and they had already, like, stapled it together. I was just unconscious that entire time.
Oh, dude. That must have been just so traumatizing for your mom.
Oh,
what are you drinking there?
Come on. Oh, this is a Kill Cliff. It's one of my sponsors, Kill Cliff.
Yeah, they were started by Navy SEALs, right? I think
absolutely, so. And they are fucking delicious.
They had that,
and they're just good people too. They've been nothing but cool to me.
Oh, they sponsor the YouTube, or they sponsor the podcast?
The brand. So they sponsor McDojoLife in general.
So yeah, now going back to kind of McDojoLife's growth, like the YouTube has grown a lot over the last year. The account obviously is big. It's probably the biggest satire/news account in the martial arts world. You went and you had a great presence and good content from ADCC. You have the documentary on the horizon, which you can speak as much as you're willing or excited to speak about. And then, I don't know, kind of like look down the road. Do you see this thing as something where like you want to bring people on, have other journalists so you can cover more material? Do you want to get to a place where McDojoLife kind of has a presence at every major martial arts or like ADC style event? Like, what's the future like for you guys aside from the content and apparel?
Well, so I think for the last 5 years now, I've had a solid game plan that I've just been going towards.
Yeah.
I've never done anything with the brand that wasn't asked of me by the followers, ever.
Sweet. Smart.
So for the first 4 years, I never showed my face.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think that it was necessary. And then all of a sudden, people, they were like, hey, we'd love to see who's running the page. We'd love that. And I was like, all right, fuck it. I'll just start doing content. And I made a piece of content that was like a untrained male fighter versus a female MMA fighter. And she, beat the brakes off of him. But the State Athletic Commission was not too happy about that. So, but yeah, so I revealed my face doing that, and then I just kept going over the years, and then that kind of turned into people wanting original content. So I started making original content. Then people were like, man, I'd really love to buy a t-shirt if you made a t-shirt. So I was like, well, I'd have to make a t-shirt that I care about, that I would wear.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the original logo that we had, so I was like, I'd never wear that shit. So I went ahead and put in a lot of time, thought, and effort into making this particular logo, which now I have. So I care about so much, I even tattooed on myself.
Oh, nice.
So my first tattoo.
He's for life.
For life, I'm in. I burned the ships. This is what I will be. And so then people started saying, man, this would make a great show. And I was like, man, it probably would make a good show. I was like, there's a lot of weird shit that people just don't know about. Yeah. So I made an attempt. I went to California. I hired out a production team. I paid an astronomical amount of money to film a pilot episode. And so I went out and I went to go take a seminar, and it was from a group called Heaven, Man, Earth. And it's this guy named Adam. Sounds culty as fuck, right?
Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, I can't wait to drink this delicious knockoff Kool-Aid brand.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's this guy named Adam Misner, who, by the way, he himself created a fucking faux documentary about chi powers being real. No scientific evidence whatsoever. It's just him doing magic tricks to MMA fighters who he clearly paid to be there.
Wow.
one of which drinks his own urine. So it's fucking weird. But anyway, so he does his like magic tricks and shit, and it's all bullshit. It's all like he had like they paid out not Samuel Jackson, but Morgan Freeman to wind up being the narrator of the thing. Like I can
So this
pay
is like
Morgan...
a full court press to actually like this guy's doing it seriously. You're calling him out right now for being a just complete fraud.
Oh, yeah. So, like, okay, he's full of shit. So I was like, oh, yeah. So I was like, I'll fucking go take the seminar. I was like, I've studied all the materials that they have online that I could study and I can get my hands on. I understand the premise of what they're doing, and as far as I can see, it's bullshit. But I'll go take a stab at figuring it out. So we met, like I sent him an email, and there was like paragraphs of like, hey, my name is, this is the entire intent of what I'm doing. I will be there at this time, like, right. Or not I'll be there at this time, but like I'll be bringing a camera crew. I need your permission for XYZ. Here's waivers, all that good stuff. And all they wrote me back was time, location. That was it. Just literally, like it was like noon, this particular park. That was it. Not signed by so-and-so, no response, nothing. And I had already paid them for the seminar. So, like, it was like, so they just wanted the money, I guess. But that's all they said. And I was like, that's weird. All right, well, fuck it. We'll take a stab at it. It's a public place, so I can still film. So we wind up going to this park. And then when we get there, I'm like there early. And I'm the only one, apparently, who showed up not in this fucking van that they showed up in. So me and my camera dude... JP, by the way, shout out to JP for being an utter boss during this entire filming. So, like, we get there and we're doing all this B-roll footage. Like, I'm explaining what's going on. You know, we were, like, filming, like, the area, and it's this dog park. And then they show up. Every one of them shows up in the same van. No one who was a part of this seminar showed up on their own. They all showed up. I'm the only guy not wearing their stuff. I'm the only guy that didn't show up with them. Like, I was like, all right, well, this sucks. And they pulled up in a black van with no windows. Like, just to set the scene here, very culty. So the guy who gets out of the van actually is not Adam Misner, but who I thought was going to be teaching the seminar. It's actually one of his understudies. But what his understudy is like this 6'4", like 300-pound, like giant-looking man who gets out of this van. And I was like, hey, how's it going? And, like, I shake his hand. I was like, I don't know if you noticed, but I have a camera guy here. I'm not sure if you're aware or got the email, but we're actually recording. And, you know, I just want to make sure it's okay with you. And he goes, absolutely not. And he walks away. And I was like, well, fuck. He's not giving me permission. I was like, well, that blows. So I go, okay, well, I already paid for the seminar. Is it okay if I just take the seminar? Yeah. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's not a problem whatsoever. So I already had my wireless mic on. So I was like, is it okay if I just take off my mic? So I took off the mic and I just set it in my pocket with the mic out. Yeah. So we still got all the audio. Then I walked over and I went to my guy, and I do believe off the top of my head, California is a one-party consent state. I need to go back and research that. But anyway, so I wind up going over to my guy, my camera guy. I was like, hey, man, I walked him away from the crowd. I was like, I don't give a fuck what you do, what you have to do. You fucking film this entire goddamn thing. And so he did. He, like, went up, because it's, like, a mountain area. So he went up to, like, one of the, like, little mountaintop areas and, like, filmed down. So we start filming this thing, and for context, this was a 6-hour seminar. 6 hours in LA in the summer in a dog park. So there's no shade where we are, and we're standing there, and for the first hour, we don't almost say a word. Almost nothing said. It is so fucking weird. So we're standing there, and he makes us just hold these poses. He's like, all right, guys. He doesn't explain what they're for. He doesn't say why we're doing them. Everyone there already knows. I have no clue, but he doesn't inform me. He's just like, all right, guys, I need you to stand like this. And so we do. We don't move. And we don't say a word for 20 minutes. We just stand there for 20 minutes. Then I'm like looking around like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, we've been here for 20 minutes. No one said why I'm standing like this, but we have to just stand there. And then all of a sudden his phone alarm goes off. He goes, all right, guys, let's go ahead and move to another pose. And we stand in another pose. Doesn't say why, doesn't explain it. We all just stand there in silence for another 20 minutes. This goes on for an hour. First hour is just 20 minutes, beep, change to this pose, 20 minutes, beep. After that, he's like, all right, guys, go and get a water break. I'm like, from what? We've done nothing. So we get the water break, and then after that, we start doing like actual movements, and things starting to loosen up, and people start talking. And eventually, he starts saying like, he starts talking a little bit about the art. I was like, okay, cool. So now he's opening up. He's a little more dialogue, and
Yeah, after he
says,
groomed you for freaking 2 hours.
oh, it was the worst. It still sucks. I think about it to this day. I wake up in cold sweats. Oh my God, I'm not in the post. Silence everywhere. And then so we start talking and things start loosening up. And then I go, well, since I'm new to this, can you kind of explain it to me? Do you guys have like belts in this particular art? And he goes, oh, no, but we do have levels. I go, okay, well, I can understand that. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I go, well, how many levels do you have? He goes, there are 10 levels. I go, oh, that's awesome. Like, I can understand that too. Like, there are usually 10 degrees and like a black belt. And, so I'm starting to piece things together. At least it's logical. It's not batshit crazy. And I go, all right, cool. Well, who's the highest level in this particular organization? He goes, oh, that's Adam Misner. I go, oh man, so Adam Misner is like a 10th level guy, right? He goes, oh, no. And he laughed at me. And I thought that was weird because if there are only 10 levels and he's the highest level,
must be a 10 level guy.
Yeah, like he's the guy. And he goes, oh, no. He's like, Adam's only a level 7. And I go, he's only a level 7? He goes, oh, yeah. Humans can't reach level 10.
Yeah. That's
yeah. I was like, all right. And then like what was even stranger was as we're talking, like there are 2 doctors next to me, like actual doctors, because as we're talking, I can tell what their jobs are, and they came up, and they're like surgeons. These are like doctors. And so they start asking him about what we're supposed to do. And one of the exercises that we were doing, and by the way, everything that I'm saying is on camera and on film, so none of it's made up. But as we're talking, he's like, all right, what I need you guys now to do is I need you to just move your muscle fascia. Don't move your muscles at all. Just move the fascia. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not a fucking doctor, but I'm pretty sure you can't do that.
Yeah,
like
you can't.
Yeah, and then so like he's talking about moving the muscle fascia. It's like when you can just isolate and just move the muscle fascia, you should start to feel a warm energy in the center of your palm. That's your chi.
Oh my God, I can't believe you lasted through this.
Oh, I didn't.
Out of there, dude.
Oh yeah,
I mean, you're filming your documentary, or you're filming.
Yeah, well, I didn't last for the whole thing because at the time I didn't know it was 6 hours. I didn't understand that it was 6 hours until around hour 3 when he was like, "All right, guys, we only got like another 3 hours left."
Well, you don't get enlightened until hour 4.5. So
yeah, fuck, I missed the enlightenment part at the last 15 minutes.
What happened with the pilot?
Well, so this is the issue with doing this as a show. So, and my understanding of how to structure it would be much different now because this is our first go, but I thought we could just film and then we could, I'd be able to roast him a little bit, but it didn't really work that way. You really don't know the tension that you have to deal with when you are literally the only motherfucker standing in a row with everyone else who is fucking crazy. And so yeah, I could say that I could be like, so humans, huh? Oh, okay. And we can move on. But it's not what you would think that it is. So we're standing there and I was like, in order for this to actually be impactful, you have to understand their side. You have to actually pull out information. Right. And if they're not willing to give you that information freely, you really have nothing to film. Then you just become an asshole. And so you don't just go places and just beat them up because that's fucking illegal, which a lot of people online don't seem to remember that you can't just go assault people because you don't believe what they're saying. So you have to educate people instead. Well, it's very hard to educate people if they don't give you their side, if they keep it so closed off. And so about the 2-hour mark.
That's why, that's why cult documentaries are always after the fact. It's like, it's not like people are going and interviewing cults while they're growing in size, right? No one would ever fucking say anything. Yeah.
it's tricky. So the 2-hour mark, his assistant goes to sip some water, and as he goes to sip some water, his head naturally tilts up. And so when his head tilted up, he just made eye contact with my camera guy. Yeah. And I was like, I looked, and he walked over to the guy in charge and goes, "Hey, I'll be right back." And then he just leaves. Well, I didn't know this because I go to text my guy. I was like, I'm pretty sure he's coming up there to see you because it was during a water break.
Yeah.
But we had no signal. So none of the texts that we had been sending each other this whole time. Yeah. The birds flung the coop. Tookie. Steal second.
Yeah.
So we couldn't signal each other. So, but luckily he was monitoring and Gilligan has reached the island.
Yeah.
Save Mr. Lovey. Mr. Howe. So yeah, he winds up, my camera guy was smart and he handled the situation or whatever. But after that, we kind of left and, it kind of tanked it as an idea for being a show. But then we realized all the things and ideas that we really wanted, we were we got enough to be like, even in all that time, we got enough dialogue that maybe we could add it into a documentary. So after a little bit of time, research, thought process, talking to the team, what we can and can't do, we as a group decided that we were going to do this as a documentary. And so then you run into every fucking problem that you could possibly run into that no one could foresee. So like, I get with the crew and I'm like, all right, guys, let's do this documentary. You're the guys I want. Let's find a time and date. They were like, well, let's crowdfund this thing. Let's see if we can get it off the ground. So we set our mark, which was way low. We were like way off. It's like,
in terms of
I know
production
nothing.
budget.
I mean, so off. So like, our production budget now is like 780. Actually, I have my production budget right here. Production budget is $787,019. That's our actual production budget. Our production budget estimated at that time was $200,000. How much we actually raised was $20,000. So
luck.
Needless to say,
Yeah.
a hair off of where we wanted to be.
Right.
So we were like, all right, well, fuck it. We'll see what we can do with $20,000. Like, I think we could do something. So we wind up going ahead and moving forward after we did our crowdfunding. So from initial concept to finishing crowdfunding was 6 months. So it was 3 months of us figuring out how we wanted to do all the crowdfunding, and then it was another 3 to raise, because we did it on Indiegogo, and they have to give you like a 90-day period of raising funds. Right. And then after that, it took another 6 months for us to be actually all available to film. So from initial concept to day one of filming was a year. People don't think about things like that when they like they're not doing it. They don't think about all the complications, and they don't think about like, it's not just me with a phone. Like, we're trying to make a real movie. So I have to have a team. They all have to be available. They all have jobs. Right. So we wind up setting the date, and we're like, that's perfect. So about a month before the date we're supposed to start filming, COVID happens.
Great.
Well, in case anybody forgets, COVID was this little thing, that highly affected any fitness industry whatsoever in the entire world. So almost like all the martial arts gyms that we wanted to go film at were closed. Regulations
Maybe it was a cleansing. Hopefully some of the shit ones couldn't open back up.
Yeah, like it was a strange time, man. It was bad. But then it was like, well, fuck. Like, we raised $20,000. We're already a year into this project, and now right before we're supposed to be filming, COVID happens. And it's like, all right, well, this is affecting everyone. People will understand. And luckily, most people did. We only had one person at that time say, hey, man, I need a refund. And I have no problem. I gave it right back to him. I was like, I understand. But everyone else supported, and they understood what we were going through. Well, COVID was supposed to be like, I think, what did they say, like 2 weeks, 2 months or something like that? It was like, and then all of a sudden
it was a $20,000 estimate on a $790,000 budget. We'll just say that.
So,
that's what it was.
I feel like that is so accurate, but hurts my heart so much.
Yeah.
So like, we decided, all right, well, let's wait. And then it was roughly about a year in to COVID where we were like, well, fuck. Well, we're going to have to work around this thing. And so at that point we were like, all right, well, let's set up another time, because at around that mark, things started easing off.
Yeah.
Around that mark. And so we were like, all right, well, let's set up another film date and time. Let's do it ASAP, because all these restrictions are starting to get lifted. Maybe by the time we actually get to that mark, we'll be able to be a lot more lifted and we'll be able to film. Well, the week I'm supposed to drive out to California, I had already planned and prepped, bought all my hotels, in which because I'm not just driving 24 hours across the country, I had to make stops. So I was like, while I make stops, I'll film content. I had already set up all my hotels, all my places I was going to stay, already spent all that money. And then that week, the restrictions went back up. So like everything went back to like almost impossible to film again. And I was like, all right, guys, we got to make a decision here. I was like, we need to either say fuck it, and we need to just work around these regulations and do everything we can, or we have to just give the money back. I was like, we're in this position. My film crew, they were like, just give us a week. Let's sit on it. Let's think about it. And then we'll come back to you about what we think is possible. Luckily, the director at the time, who now really is just the head of the production company, but he was the only director we really had. So for lack of better words, the director, Alex, was like, you know what? We looked at it. We think we can adjust some things around. We can make this happen. They said, let's just go ahead and film. Let's do it. Like, I think we can do this. And so we did. So January of last year, January through March, we were finally able to shoot 3 months straight. And we shot a ton of great footage. We have a lot of great experiments. We were able to talk to psychologists. We were able to talk to cult experts. We were able to talk to religious leaders. We were able to talk to Navy SEALs. We were able to talk to some of the best martial artists on the planet, some of the most respected martial arts on the planet. And we were able to talk to the top 5 con artists to ever do it. And so because of that, it gave us like this great position. So then after that, just I'm glad that you're giving me a platform to talk about all this.
Dude,
by the way,
I mean, I can't wait to watch it. Like, I think that this is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, well, I do too, knowing what I know. But then we decided, we were like, okay, well, since we have this amount of footage, well, now it's time to start making the lemonade. And then we realized, like, okay, well, with what we have something special. So a friend of mine, Jonathan Sadowski, who's just a buddy, like he's a Jiu Jitsu enthusiast, and he loves the page, but he also is pretty good producer.
Yeah.
He goes, we had problems with creating the sizzle reel because we wanted to put together a pitch deck. For anybody who doesn't know, a pitch deck is like a PowerPoint on paper explaining what your project is about, and that's usually what you present in order to have a pitch meeting. And so we had a pitch deck, and then we made a sizzle reel, but we hated the sizzle reel. We just we could not edit it in a way that we really liked. So he was like, I got a guy for you. He'll be your director. Talked to him. Everything worked out. He did become our director. He also has helped us tremendously in the industry. We're now represented by UTA, which is one of the top 3 talent agencies in the world.
Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah.
That's massive.
And then,
I mean,
yeah, it's a huge deal. And then UTA got us meetings with Hulu and Amazon. As of right now, Hulu did pass. But then, because of ADCC just rolled around, we were like still looking to try to wrap up and finish the project, which, while you're filming it during COVID, like if we just filmed, like put some of the stuff in there as was, we could use the Zoom footage, but it just looks like shit.
Right.
We could use some of the audio, but it just turns out like shit because you have to remember we filmed during COVID. Right. So we had to work around things. Well, we go back to the table now with this new director who understands like the scope of what the project can be. And he goes, now that UTA is representing, and they were like, let's re-budget and let's make this what it should be. Like, let's make it all it can be. He goes, this is going to have to be your new budget if you really want to make this the best thing you can make it. So we're like, okay, let's do that. Well, now you need investors and backers. So I'm at ADCC. Thank you, Mo. Yeah. Shout out to Mo for invite.
And for putting on the greatest grappling event
of all time. Yeah, a legendary shit, man.
Yeah, serious.
And so I get, not introduced, but I meet somebody who comes on board literally at ADCC, who is now our new executive producer, which we'll be able to announce once that paperwork is finalized. And then now that name is on board, not only, and now that UTA, our new director, and this new person's coming on board, not only do I think that what we can make is bigger than I could have ever fucking imagined it could be. And I understand that people might be impatient. You have to understand, no one's as impatient.
Yeah.
No one's as impatient about this shit as I am. Like, have faith that everything I'm doing is guiding this to something, to what it should be.
Yeah. I mean, dude, the audience that you're going to have with all the pieces that are in play now, and how those pieces also just kind of vet what you're doing just by the relationship alone. You go back to kind of just your underlying principles of why you're doing this, the awareness, right? Bringing this stuff to light. There hasn't been a movie like this ever. And when it comes out, it will speak so directly to, even though, like you said, globally, it's not the biggest industry in the world, but it's a clandestine one, and it's going to spread like crazy. I am very, very excited to watch this. I think it's going to be funny and super serious, too, at some points.
That's the goal. Like, I want the feel of the page, I guess you could say. But I want to dig into a lot of the things that I don't really have the opportunity to have a voice for on social media platforms.
Yeah, because you're limited. Right.
So, and now that we're almost... we really did not want it to be 100% independently funded. That was not the original goal, because that is the hard road. We wanted like an Amazon, Netflix, or Hulu to just pick the shit up, because we were like, no one's ever done it. Obviously, it's got a huge audience. This should be a no-brainer. Well, apparently, it's not as much of a no-brainer to people who don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So
Right,
like,
right.
they're
But
like,
that's,
so
I mean, therein lies the challenge of a good documentary, right? What does a good documentary do? It exposes something that's interesting that other people didn't know about before in a way that draws you in, and you can relate to it. Like, everyone can relate to agreeing that a pedophile is bad, right? Exposing their existence within a certain industry like this, for example. And I'm not saying this is what the documentary does, but that does draw in people that maybe they don't do martial arts, but they can agree with the messaging or what you're after. It's the same thing like, I'm not a Scientologist, I don't care for it, but I'm going to watch a documentary about it because I think that that's fascinating, right? So I think that with this positioning, you're going to be able to draw more people into it, and then that benefits the greater good of what you guys are doing anyway by exposing this stuff.
and I think it'd be such an injustice to settle. I just cannot bring myself to settle. I just can't. There's something wired in my brain that will not allow me to do so. And this project means so much to me. I don't want to half-ass it. And so every time I get one of these new opportunities to make it something greater, I'm going to take it. And I understand that that might take a little more time, and some people might get impatient. But
yeah, but the only thing
if
that's
I'm
going to
gonna,
happen during that time is the account and the YouTube and the presence is going to grow more, right? So it's like you keep hammering away doing what you're doing, and then it'll come out. We're going to have to get you back on here when it airs. Although I imagine, like I said, given the partnerships, that's going to be, you're going to be a tough man to get a hold of all of a sudden.
absolutely
Fingers
not.
crossed.
Absolutely not. Like one thing I said I have rules for the page, right? Like what I call a McDojo. Well, I have rules for myself. And there's a couple ground rules I gave myself that I refuse to budge on. One, I said I would answer everyone's messages that ever sent me a message ever. And as difficult as that is, and sometimes it does take me even months to get to someone's message, I answer every one of those messages. So if you've ever reached out to me, anybody listening, and you're like, you never answered me, send me another one. It'll put it to the top of the page. Trust me, I'll just get to you quicker. But that was one. And the other one was I said I'd be on anyone's show who ever asked me, period. And so it's funny because I've been on so many people's podcasts who were like, it was their first episode and they never did a second.
Yeah.
It's like they did the first episode and then they just didn't want to do podcasts or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like, maybe I fucked them up, but like anybody that reaches out, like I'll reach back out. It's the least I can do. I'm just a dude. People just happen to follow what I do, but I remember what it was like when I wanted to reach out to people and they didn't answer me. Yeah. That shit fucking sucks, So
yeah,
I don't
remember. You remember. You really do. You remember when people. You remember when people respond. You remember when they don't. You remember when they respond and then they bail, and they ghost. Mm-hmm. You remember when they uphold. Like all that stuff sticks, and I mean, I resonate a lot with that. Like as you're trying to grow something, you have to be aware of how things make you feel in the growth process. And so if you feel like every time you got blown off or someone didn't give you the time of day, you're like, man, what the hell? It makes you want to be better than that when you get there. So you're like, you know what? I'm always going to help people out. I'll always give people the time of day when they have questions about how to get a podcast up off the ground or how to do production or video editing or auto editing. Like, why wouldn't I? Because the people that did do that for me, it means the world. It totally means the world. And I think it's good to be a good person too, So.
Yeah, like I mean I've had these opportunities over the years to talk to some pretty incredible people, and I'm always grateful for the fact that they even responded to me.
Yep.
And so that's like usually that's the most impactful thing. Like I still get people today, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe you responded. Like, why wouldn't you? I guess there's a lot of douchebags out there who don't respond. That's all that tells me.
There's 5 kids that would gang up on a kid and stab him with a pencil too. So like there's some shit boxes out there, but it's hopefully they'll, dissipate.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's weird looking back on shit like that too. You reflect and like I guess when you're in a moment that changes your life, at the moment you don't usually realize that it is a life-changing moment.
Totally.
And so I look back on that and I'm like, fuck, like if that never happened, it never leads down this path, So I'm grateful for it.
Well, Rob, it was a pleasure having you on here. It was awesome to talk about everything. Like I said, imagine the conversation would be a lot more satirical, but I appreciate the willingness to be serious and talk about some of this stuff. Keep the humor light in there also, and I can't wait to check out this documentary. So I know we won't be able to plug it in this episode because it won't be out yet, but when it does air, it would be great to have you back on and talk about it and maybe cover the gaps between where you're at now and the final production process, and then do a little more of the reveal stuff that you can't yet. So we'll keep in touch, man. Thank you for doing this.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for talking shop with me.